Welcome to today's deep dive. We are so glad you are here with us because, well, today we are going somewhere incredible. I want you to just imagine for a second that you are standing inside a 600-year-old Gothic cathedral.
Oh, setting the scene right away.
Exactly. So you're looking up at this towering ancient stone altar, right? But hovering right above you is this hyper-modern wrought iron canopy.
Which is completely unexpected.
Right. And then just off to the side, you peek into a sacred chapel. And the walls are literally covered in a contemporary ceramic mural of fish bursting out of the stone.
Yeah, it is a profoundly disorienting image, especially if you were expecting a traditional, dusty historical monument.
Completely disorienting. And honestly, that clash is exactly why we're bypassing the glossy tourist brochures today.
Thank goodness for that.
I mean, usually when you think of a Mediterranean island getaway, your brain jumps to a very, flat image. Pristine beach, a lounge chair, a bright blue drink.
Standard vacation postcard.
Exactly. But when you step off the plane in Palma de Mallorca, that simple picture just shatters. You're certainly standing in this absolute collision of empires, eras, and frankly, sensory extremes.
Because there is absolutely nothing flat about Palma. It is the definition of living history.
So our mission today is to give you a shortcut to being deeply well-informed before you ever set foot on those cobblestones. We've dug through this massive stack of architectural analyses, historical walking guides, culinary breakdowns, and even nightlife maps.
We really went everywhere with the sources.
We did, and we want to uncover the hidden rhythms of this city so you understand how it actually works, minus the tourist traps, and of course, completely devoid of any political posturing. So, okay, let's unpack this, starting with the sky.
The sky, right, and the stone reaching up to it. Because when you first arrive in Palma, the skyline is entirely dictated by these massive, undeniable historical structures.
You physically cannot miss Seu, the Palma Cathedral. It was commissioned back in the 13th century by King Jean I, and the sheer scale of the place is staggering.
Oh, for sure.
The central nave is supported by pillars that are 44 meters high.
Which, just for context, is roughly equivalent to a 14-story building.
Wow.
Just for the pillars holding up the ceiling. It is an absolute masterclass in a very specific style called Levantine Gothic architecture.
Now, how does that differ from the typical Gothic cathedrals people might picture in, say, France or England? Like the really spiky ones.
Right, yeah. So Northern Gothic is usually obsessed with verticality, pointing up to heaven with those tall spires. But Levantine Gothic, which is pretty unique to this Mediterranean coastline, is obsessed with interior space and light.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the architects essentially figured out how to push the immense crushing weight of the stone roof outward using external flying buttresses.
Okay.
And by shifting that weight outside, the interior walls didn't need to be solid stone anymore, so they could hollow them out and replace them with these massive panes of glass.
And they took full advantage of that glass, didn't they?
Oh, completely.
Because there's this feature in Seu called the Eye of the Gothic. It's the eastern rose window. And our sources say it's nearly 14 meters wide, made of 12,236 individual pieces of stained glass.
It's massive.
But it's not just a big window. Twice a year, I think it's February 2nd and November 11th, between 8 and 9 in the morning, something incredible happens.
This is my favorite part.
It's so cool. The Earth's tilt aligns the sunrise at the exact angle needed to shoot a beam of light straight through that eastern window, completely across the massive empty space of the nave, and land dead center on the wall right below the smaller western window.
And it creates a perfect, glowing figure 8 of light.
A perfect 8.
It requires such a profound understanding of mathematics, astronomy, and geometry. They had to calculate the exact angle of the sun during late autumn and late winter, and then construct a 14-story stone building around that invisible line of light.
Wait, so they essentially built a giant architectural calendar.
Basically.
It's like a medieval Stonehenge for the sun,
right,
but completely enclosed inside a church.
That is exactly what it is. A 600-year-old mechanism just to capture a fleeting moment of celestial alignment.
It's unbelievable. I have to admit, though, I am struggling to understand something here.
What's that?
Well, you have this ancient sacred space that took 6 centuries of painstaking mathematical genius to build. But then, in the early 20th century, the city let Antoni Gaudi, who is a pretty radical modernist, just come in and hang that giant wrought iron canopy over the altar.
Right, the one you mentioned earlier.
Yeah. And then by the 21st century, they let a local painter, Miquel Barceló, create that ceramic mural, making the Chapel of the Blessed Sacrament look like the bottom of the ocean. doesn't that completely ruin the historical integrity of the building? Like, why is Palma so eager to mix 13th century Gothic with avant-garde modernism?
I get the skepticism, I really do. Because a lot of historic cities treat their monuments like delicate museum exhibits. You know, look, but do not touch.
Exactly. Put a velvet rope around it.
Right. But Palma's philosophy is different. They treat Seu as a living, breathing canvas. The core belief is that history didn't just stop in the 14th century.
Okay, I see.
You preserve the Gothic bones, absolutely, but you allow the current generation to add their voice to the room. It's a continuing, active conversation across centuries, rather than just like a frozen diorama.
You really see that layered history play out physically, too, when you look at the Castel de Bellver.
Oh, definitely.
It's a 14th century castle sitting high on a wooded hill overlooking the bay. And it is completely circular, which our sources point out is incredibly rare.
It is, and it perfectly encapsulates that clash of eras we're talking about. You can stand on the roof and look down into a pristine, beautifully arched Gothic courtyard. It's at the absolute peak of royal luxury.
Right.
But if you turn around and examine the walls on the roof, you find crude graffiti etched deep into the stone. Those carvings were left by prisoners during the Napoleonic Wars and the Spanish Civil War, when the lower levels of the castle were used as a brutal prison.
So you have the elegance of a royal court, literally built into the same stone as the desperation of political prisoners.
Exactly. It's jarring.
But, those massive structures are just the canopy of the city. To see how Palma really operates, you have to step away from the skyline and get down into the roots. The narrow, secretive alleyways of the Casco Antiguo, the Old Town.
Yes, moving from the grand architecture down to the foundational level.
Because down in the Old Town, the different eras of history are physically stacked on top of each other. Right. Take the Arab baths, for example.
Spanish Arabs, yeah.
Right, they date back to the 10th and 12th centuries. You walk into this lush, peaceful courtyard, and you see these crumbling, ancient columns holding up Moorish arches. But if you look closely, those columns don't match.
They don't match at all.
No, because they were actually ripped out of even older Roman buildings and recycled by the Moors. It's like the ultimate ancient recycling program.
That's a great way to put it. And what's fascinating here is, well, let me ask you this. Have you ever written something in a notebook, pressing really hard with a pencil, and then erased it to write something new?
Oh, sure, yeah. And you can still see the physical indentation of the old words on the paper.
Exactly. Historians call that a palimpsest. It originally referred to parchment, where old text was scraped away to make room for new writing, but the erasure is never perfect. Faint traces of the old ideas always bleed through, and Palma streets operate exactly like a palimpsest.
That makes total sense, especially when you navigate the Jewish quarter, the Calmaire. In the Middle Ages, this was this fortified, walled city within a city.
A really dense, vibrant area.
Yeah, and you can start walking from the Oliveira de Court, which is this stunning, gnarled, ancient olive tree, and eventually you find yourself standing in front of the Iglesia de Montejón.
Right.
It's a Christian church, but it was built directly over the foundations of what was once Palma's main synagogue.
The ultimate architectural palimpsest right there. The dominant culture physically builds over the previous one.
But the erasure isn't perfect. If you look closely at the lower section of that church, the stones that originally belonged to the synagogue, you will see tiny pieces of paper tucked into the cracks.